In the shimmering dawn of Earth's rebirth, a gun pressed cold and hard against his temple became more than a threat. It was a promise. The alien woman, Rose, her skin a flawless blue, hair the color of emerald forests, met his amused gaze with a fury that could incinerate planets. "Say goodbye," she snarled, her words slicing the silence of the high-tech skybridge like a blade. But he just laughed, that maddening, unbreakable smile that had carried him through wars and heartbreak. "Check your safety, killer," he teased, the smirk on his lips defying the world's end. Belle, another alien beauty, quiet, watchful, stood behind her friend, her eyes betraying a flicker of doubt. Around them, the futuristic skyline pulsed with life, unaware that the fate of two worlds teetered on a trigger's edge. Rose's finger twitched, each heartbeat a silent countdown. Yet in that fleeting instant, the glint in his eyes made her question everything. This wasn't just a standoff. It was the final, desperate chance for something neither human nor alien could have foreseen. An alliance forged in the fires of betrayal, love, and a war that refused to end. The sun rose over the alien metropolis, casting a golden glow on the gleaming spires that reached for the heavens. Hovercrafts zipped through the sky, their silent engines humming a song of progress. But amid the beauty and the promise of the city, a confrontation was brewing on a lonely balcony suspended high above the streets. Rose, the alien woman with skin like the deep blue ocean and hair that shimmered with the colors of a vibrant forest, stood poised and unflinching. Her hand gripped the pistol so tightly that the metal threatened to fuse with her bones. Her eyes, piercing and ancient, were locked on the man before her. A man who had dared to stand where no human should. He was everything she despised and everything she couldn't look away from. Blonde hair tousled by the wind, a smirk that mocked death itself, and a lean, muscular build that spoke of endless battles. He leaned back against the railing, his body relaxed, but his eyes alive with a kind of defiance that Rose had never seen. It was the way he held her gaze, like he knew her, like he'd always known her, that made her finger tremble on the trigger. "Say goodbye," she spat, her voice low and deadly. He just laughed, a sound that was both infuriating and magnetic. "Check your safety, killer," he said, his voice a lazy drawl that sent chills down her spine. It was a challenge, a dare, one she had every intention of answering. Behind her, Belle watched with a calm intensity. Unlike Rose, Belle had always been the diplomat, the one who believed there could be peace between their kind and his. But even she couldn't deny the storm brewing in Rose's eyes. Belle's green hair glowed in the morning light, her expression unreadable as she stood with her arms crossed, silent witness to this showdown. The city around them paid no heed to their drama. Neon billboards flickered with promises of a future that felt as empty as the sky above. Alien children laughed on the walkways below, oblivious to the weight of the moment teetering on the edge of that gun. Somewhere, music played, a soft, lilting melody that felt out of place in a world built on blood and betrayal. Rose's memories clawed at her. She remembered the treaties signed in rooms filled with false smiles and poison words. She remembered the night her brother was killed by a human patrol, and now this man, this human, stood before her like a symbol of everything she had lost. She had every reason to hate him, every reason to pull the trigger and end this once and for all. But the way he smiled, the way he refused to look away, made her pause. Was it madness? Or was it something more? Belle's voice finally broke the silence. "Rose," she said gently, her tone a thread of reason in the chaos. "Don't let the past decide this moment. Don't let them win by making you like them." Rose didn't move, but her jaw clenched. The gun pressed harder against the man's head, and still he didn't flinch. The sun rose higher, its light a cruel spotlight on their deadly dance. For a moment, time itself seemed to hold its breath, and in that breath, The future waited to be written. Rose pressed the barrel of the gun against his temple, her gaze never wavering, even as the man before her smirked. She knew the scent of fear, but there was none in him, only an amused curiosity that infuriated her. The sun's golden rays danced across his face, giving him an almost angelic glow. But she knew better. There was nothing angelic about humans. The city bustled beneath them, a constant reminder of the fragile alliance that held this world together. Hovercrafts glided soundlessly through the air, casting fleeting shadows across the balcony where life and death now balanced. Rose's finger hovered over the trigger, every muscle taut with anticipation. This was her chance to erase everything he represented, to avenge the brother whose name she never spoke aloud. The human didn't blink, didn't flinch. His posture was infuriatingly casual, as if they were discussing the weather rather than dancing on the edge of annihilation. His blonde hair caught the sunlight, making him look like a hero from the stories the children below would tell. But she had seen those stories twist and rot, leaving nothing but ruin in their wake. Belle stood silently to her left, her green hair drifting softly in the breeze. She said nothing, but her eyes spoke volumes. Belle had always been the voice of reason, the one who tempered Rose's fire with gentle words and patient understanding. But even she couldn't deny the weight of this moment. The gun in Rose's hand was more than a weapon. It was a testament to everything they had lost. "Say goodbye," Rose growled, her voice low and deadly. The words tasted bitter on her tongue, a final declaration of her intent. She had waited for this moment, planned it down to the last detail, and now it was here. Her heart beat a furious rhythm in her chest, every pulse a countdown. The human laughed softly, a sound that grated against her nerves. "Check your safety, killer," he said, his tone mocking but not cruel. His eyes, the color of storm clouds, met hers with a calm intensity that made her breath catch. He wasn't pleading, wasn't bargaining. He was simply there, unyielding, unafraid. "Do you think this is a game?" she hissed, her grip tightening on the gun. "Do you think your smirk can save you?" His lips curved into a smile that held no fear. "No," he said, "but maybe it can save you." For a moment, confusion flickered in her gaze. Belle shifted, her expression unreadable. Rose could feel the weight of Belle's stare, the silent plea in her friend's eyes. Belle believed in bridges, in finding common ground where there was none. But Rose had seen those bridges burn, had walked through the ashes they left behind. "You don't know me," she spat, her voice trembling with rage. The gun pressed harder against his skin, the final warning before the storm. He didn't blink. "Maybe," he said, his voice quiet but unbroken. "Or maybe I know you better than anyone else ever could." A flicker of something, doubt, maybe, or something deeper, crossed her eyes. But she pushed it down, buried it beneath the years of betrayal and loss. She wouldn't let him break her resolve. She couldn't. Belle finally spoke, her voice soft but firm. "Rose," she said, her hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "This isn't you. You're more than this." Rose's jaw clenched. "I am exactly who I need to be," she said, her voice a steel blade cutting through the air. But the words felt hollow, even to her. The human shifted slightly, his body language relaxed, almost casual. "If you're going to do it," he said, his eyes locked on hers, "then do it. But don't lie to yourself about why." Her breath caught, the words cutting deeper than any weapon. The city hummed around them, oblivious to the war playing out in a single heartbeat. Rose's finger twitched on the trigger, the weight of her choice pressing down like gravity. Memories crashed through her, her brother's laughter, the warmth of his smile before the humans took it all away. She had carried that wound for so long, let it define every choice she made. But now, with the gun in her hand, and the man's calm eyes meeting hers, she felt something shift, something she couldn't name. Belle's hand tightened on her shoulder, grounding her in the present. "Rose," she said again, her voice a lifeline. "You're not alone in this. Let it go." The man's smile never faltered. "Pull the trigger," he said softly. "Or don't. But know that it's your choice, not theirs." For the first time, Rose hesitated. The gun felt heavier in her hand, the weight of her anger threatening to drag her under. She had spent so long surviving, so long fighting. But in that moment, staring into the human's eyes, she realized that survival wasn't the same as living. The sun climbed higher, casting them in a halo of light. Rose took a breath, her finger hovering over the trigger. The world seemed to hold its breath with her. And then, with a final exhale, she made her choice. The decision echoed in the silence between them. But Rose didn't lower the weapon. She couldn't let herself be vulnerable, not when she'd been forged in the fires of betrayal. Belle's gentle hand fell away, but her presence lingered like a ghost's whisper, steady and unyielding. Rose's pulse thundered in her ears, each beat a testament to her battle-hardened resolve. The man leaned back a fraction, his lips still curled in that infuriating smirk. Sunlight painted golden patterns across his shoulders, making him look almost ethereal, like he belonged to some other world, untouched by the violence that defined hers. But she knew better. Humans weren't angels, and this one was no different. "You're still here," he said, his voice calm, not mocking this time. "That means something." Rose's jaw tightened. "Don't twist this," she snapped. "I'm not here for your games." "No games," he replied, his tone measured, thoughtful. "Just the truth." She almost laughed. The truth. What did he know of truth? The world had taught her that truth was as changeable as the sky, shifting with the tides of power and fear. Still, something in his tone made her pause, made her question the line she had drawn in the sand. Belle's eyes met hers, calm but unwavering. "We're not the only ones with scars, Rose," she said softly. "He carries his own." The human's gaze didn't falter. "Belle's right," he said. "I've seen enough to know that pain can make you forget what mercy looks like." A flicker of memory surged through her, unbidden and sharp. Her brother's laughter in the twilight, the promise he'd made her that one day they would see the stars together. She'd held that promise close, even as the world tore it from her grasp. She'd buried it beneath rage, let it fester into something sharp and lethal. "Don't talk to me about mercy," she hissed. "Not when your kind taught me how to hate." His eyes darkened, but he didn't flinch. "And yet," he said, his voice steady, "here we are. You, me, and a chance to do something different." The gun trembled in her hand, the weight of her choice pressing down like a storm cloud. Belle stepped closer, her hand brushing Rose's arm with quiet reassurance. "He's not them," Belle said. "He's just one man, and maybe he's not the enemy." Rose's breath caught. She wanted to believe that, but belief was a luxury she had long since discarded. She had seen too much, lost too much. And yet, the way he looked at her, with a calm that defied her fury, made her wonder if there was another way, another path she hadn't dared to walk. The city below seemed to hold its breath, the hum of engines fading into a low, distant murmur. Rose could feel the weight of the past pressing down, threatening to drag her under. But for the first time she let herself see him, not as a symbol of everything she hated, but as a man, flesh and blood just like her. "I should kill you," she whispered, her voice raw. "I should end this now." He didn't move. "Then do it," he said softly. "But if you're going to kill me, do it because you want to. Not because you're trying to silence the echoes of ghosts." The words cut through her like a blade, sharp and clean. For a moment she couldn't breathe. She had lived so long in the shadow of her brother's death, let it define every step she took. But in that moment, she saw the truth in his eyes, truth she had tried so hard to bury. Belle's fingers tightened on her arm, grounding her in the present. "Rose," she said quietly, "you're not your past. You're more than what they made you." The gun wavered, her resolve fraying like old rope. She met Belle's steady gaze, saw the unspoken plea there. Belle had always believed in bridges, in the possibility of something better, and maybe, just maybe, Rose could too. She let out a shaky breath, the weight of the gun heavy in her hand. The man watched her, silent, patient. He wasn't pleading, wasn't begging. He was simply waiting. Slowly, she lowered the weapon, the barrel no longer pressed to his temple. The tension between them didn't vanish, but it shifted, became something quieter, more fragile. A truce, however temporary. The man's smile softened, no longer mocking. "Thank you," he said, his voice low, "for choosing something different." Rose didn't answer. She couldn't. But for the first time, she didn't feel like she was drowning. The city below them shimmered in the bright morning light, a promise of what could be, if she was brave enough to let it. The hush that fell over them was a fragile thing, like glass waiting to shatter. Rose still held the gun, but its power had shifted. It was no longer a threat, but a question that hovered in the air. She didn't trust him, couldn't trust him, but in that moment she found herself curious. Who was this man who stared down death and smiled? Belle moved closer, her steps soft and sure. Her green hair glowed softly in the morning light, a beacon of calm in the chaos. "Rose," she murmured, her voice gentle. "You don't have to fight alone anymore." Rose's gaze flicked to Belle, searching for answers she wasn't sure she wanted. Belle had always been the voice of reason, the one who saw hope in the cracks of a broken world. It was her gift and her curse, and Rose both envied and resented it. The man shifted his weight, still leaning against the railing as if the last few moments hadn't happened at all. "My name is Jace," he said finally, his tone level. "Not that it matters. Names are just words. Actions are what count." Rose said nothing. The name meant nothing to her, just another human syllable in a sea of betrayal. But the way he said it, like he knew it was a small truth in a world of lies, caught her attention. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice sharp but no longer venomous. Jace tilted his head, considering her. "Because I've seen enough to know that lines in the sand only last until the next storm," he said. "Because I believe there's something here worth saving, even if you don't believe it yet." Belle's eyes softened, a quiet smile touching her lips. "He's not wrong," she said. "We've spent so long trying to survive, we've forgotten what it feels like to build something instead of just holding on." Rose's grip on the gun tightened. She wanted to believe them, wanted to let herself hope. But hope was dangerous. It was a seed that could grow into something beautiful, or wither into nothing at all. "You think you can just walk in here and convince me to—" "What? Trust you?" she demanded, her voice tight. "No," Jace said, shaking his head. "I don't expect trust, not yet. I just want you to see that there's more than this, more than anger, more than the past." The words struck something deep inside her, a place she had tried to bury. She remembered laughter, the feel of her brother's arm around her shoulders as they watched the stars. She remembered a world that hadn't yet been poisoned by fear. And for a heartbeat, she let herself wonder if that world could exist again. Belle reached out, her fingers brushing Rose's shoulder with a touch that was both comforting and insistent. "We don't have to do this alone," she said softly. "We can choose a different path." Jace watched them, his eyes steady, his expression calm. He wasn't pushing, wasn't pleading. He was offering, an outstretched hand in a world that had taught her to flinch from every kindness. Rose's jaw tightened, her eyes darting between Belle and Jace. She didn't know what to believe, didn't know if belief was even possible. But the way Belle's eyes glowed with quiet certainty, the way Jace stood unflinching in the face of her fury, made her pause. "Words are cheap," she said finally, her voice low. "Prove it." Jace's smile was quick, but there was no mockery in it. "Fair enough," he said. "Tell me what you need, and I'll show you." Belle's eyes brightened, a spark of something fierce and unbreakable flickering in their depths. "We need someone who will stand with us," she said. "Not because it's easy, but because it's right." Jace nodded once, his expression hardening. "Then that's what I'll be," he said. Rose let out a slow breath, her shoulders relaxing fractionally. The gun in her hand no longer felt like a promise of death. It felt like a weight she was finally ready to set down. She lowered it, her fingers brushing the cold metal one last time, before she let it hang at her side. The city around them seemed to breathe again, the quiet hum of engines and the laughter of children drifting up from the streets below. For the first time in a long time, Rose felt something shift inside her, something that felt like possibility. Belle's hand squeezed her shoulder, a silent promise that she wasn't alone. Jace met her gaze with a steady calm that didn't ask for trust, but offered it anyway. And for the first time, Rose let herself wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was a future worth fighting for. The gentle hum of the city below seemed to echo the fragile hope Rose now dared to let in. She lowered the gun, fingers tightening around the cold metal as if it were a lifeline she had forgotten how to hold. The weight of the weapon had shifted. It was no longer a tool of vengeance, but a relic of the past that she wasn't ready to let go of just yet. Jace didn't move, his posture still casual, as if nothing had happened. But there was a glint in his eyes now, a quiet triumph that said he understood the battle wasn't won, only paused. Belle's hand rested lightly on Rose's arm, her touch a silent anchor that kept her from drifting too far into the uncertainty of this moment. "Where do we go from here?" Rose asked, her voice low. She hated how unsure it sounded, but honesty was all she had left. Jace tilted his head, his gaze drifting over the bustling skyline as if searching for answers in the neon lights and soaring towers. "That depends," he said slowly, his tone thoughtful. "Are you willing to see what lies beyond the anger?" Rose's jaw clenched. She wanted to scoff, to push him away with the same force she had always used to keep the world at bay. But something about his calm, steady presence made her pause. She had spent so long defining herself by her rage. What was left if she let it go? Belle's voice cut through her thoughts, quiet but firm. "He's right," she said. "We've lived in the shadows of old wounds for too long. It's time to see if there's still light out there." Rose looked at her friend, seeing the quiet strength that had always been there, the unwavering belief that had carried them both through countless battles. She had always envied Belle's faith, her ability to find hope in the ruins. But now, standing here with the city spread out before them like a promise, she felt a flicker of that same belief take root in her own heart. "Words are easy," she said, her voice soft. "I need more than promises." Jace nodded once, his expression serious. "Then let me show you," he said, "not with speeches but with actions." Rose studied him, searching for any trace of deception. But all she saw was the quiet determination of a man who had nothing left to lose. It was a look she knew well. She had worn it herself for far too long. "All right," she said finally, her voice steady. "Show me." Jace's smile was small but genuine, a flicker of warmth that made her breath catch in her chest. Belle squeezed her arm once before stepping back, giving them space. The sun had climbed higher, bathing the city in golden light that glowed against the sleek glass and steel of the towers. For a moment, it felt like anything was possible. Jace took a step closer, his movements deliberate but unthreatening. "There's a place," he said, his voice low. "A safe house, hidden from prying eyes. I can take you there. Show you what we're building. It's not much yet, but it's a start." Rose hesitated. The thought of following him, of putting even a sliver of trust in his hands, made her chest tighten with fear. But the alternative was staying here, locked in a cycle of violence that had already stolen too much from her. Belle's voice, calm and sure, cut through the uncertainty. "We've come this far, Rose," she said. "Maybe it's time to see what lies beyond the edge." Rose took a breath, steadying herself against the tide of doubt that threatened to drag her under. She nodded once, a silent agreement. "Lead the way," she said. Jace's eyes flickered with something like relief, though he didn't let it show on his face. He turned, gesturing for them to follow as he led them away from the balcony and into the winding maze of skybridges and alleyways that crisscrossed the city like veins. They moved together in silence, the hum of engines and distant laughter a constant backdrop to the quiet tension that lingered between them. Rose kept her hand on the gun at her side, not ready to give it up completely, but for the first time, she didn't feel like it was the only thing keeping her safe. As they walked, Jace spoke in low, measured tones, explaining the network of allies and outcasts that had come together in the shadows, bound not by loyalty to any one flag, but by a shared desire to carve out something new from the wreckage of what had been. His words painted a picture of possibility, a fragile hope that flickered like a candle in the dark. Belle listened quietly, her expression thoughtful, while Rose kept her gaze on the path ahead, her mind a whirlwind of questions and unspoken fears. But with every step, the weight in her chest grew a little lighter. The sun was high in the sky when they reached the safe house, a nondescript building hidden in the heart of the city's oldest district. Jace stopped at the entrance, turning to face them with that same calm, unflinching gaze. "Welcome to the beginning," he said quietly. The safe house was a patchwork of old walls and new dreams, humming with the quiet energy of those who refused to give up. As Rose walked deeper into its heart, she felt the wariness in her bones start to ease, even if only a little. The walls weren't made of steel and secrecy, but of voices, laughter, and small acts of trust. It was nothing like the fortresses of her past, no cold silence, no endless echo of betrayal. Jace moved through the room with calm purpose, stopping to trade a quiet word here, a shared glance there. He belonged to this place in a way Rose envied. He didn't wear his past like a shroud, but carried it in his eyes, something that had shaped him, but hadn't broken him. Belle followed close behind, her expression soft and thoughtful. She offered quiet smiles to those who nodded in greeting, her presence a balm to the uncertainty in the room. Rose stayed back, watching the subtle ways humans and aliens work together, blue-skinned technicians hunched over consoles beside human engineers, warriors sharing maps of the city's shifting streets, children of both worlds darting between them with laughter that cut through the weight of it all. It was messy, imperfect, but it was real. A fragile harmony that had survived where everything else had failed. Belle caught Rose's gaze, her eyes bright with gentle insistence. "You see it, don't you?" she asked softly. "The chance for something more." Rose hesitated, her hand resting on the weapon at her side. "I see the cracks," she said honestly, "and the light that slips through them." The admission tasted foreign, like words she hadn't let herself believe in years. But they were true. Jace paused beside her, his voice quiet. "Hope lives in the spaces between," he said, "in the places no one else remembers to look." He didn't try to convince her further, didn't try to push her past the line she'd drawn. Instead, he offered her the simplest thing of all, time. She didn't answer, but she didn't pull away. That was enough for now. Night fell slowly outside, the city's lights flickering to life like distant stars. Rose found herself by the window again, staring out at the streets that glowed with neon color. Once, she would have seen only the threat in the shadows. Tonight, she saw the possibility. Jace stepped up beside her, close but not crowding her. "You don't have to decide everything now," he said, his tone easy. "But you're welcome to stay, as long as you want." Belle joined them, her hand resting lightly on Rose's shoulder. "We're here," she said simply. "Together." A long silence stretched between them, the kind that carried no weight, only quiet understanding. Rose felt the years of anger in her chest shift, becoming something she could carry instead of something that carried her. She turned to Belle and then to Jace, her eyes clear. "I'll stay," she said at last. "For now." The relief that flickered in their eyes was almost enough to make her smile. Almost. As they stood together, the city thrummed below, 1,000 lives, 1,000 chances. Rose didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she didn't feel like she had to walk into it alone. The weight of her weapon at her side was still there, but it no longer felt like the only thing she had. The warmth of Belle's hand, the quiet promise in Jace's gaze. These were weapons, too, of a different kind. And maybe, she thought, those were the ones that would finally let her find peace. She looked out at the stars above the city, tiny pinpricks of light in a sky that had once felt endless. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight she let herself believe it might hold something worth fighting for. With a final breath, she turned from the window. She stepped forward, leaving behind the shadows of everything she'd lost. Because she wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was something more. And in the safe house's warm glow, surrounded by the quiet hum of life and laughter, she found her first real beginning.